Hello there, everybody. It's wonderful to see you today. Thank you for tuning in for today's teaching on First Samuel. Today, we're going to be looking at First Samuel 5 and 6 as a prophetic narrative. Yes, they refer to events that happened in the ancient world, but the wonderful thing about the Bible is that there's nothing new under the sun. And God called the past to account. He makes history repeat itself so that it puts parameters or boundaries on the enemy. And so we can see what the enemy did in the past, correlate it to what the enemy is doing now, see what the heroes of old did in the past, and see what we can do today to defeat the enemy in our time. So, First Samuel 5 opens up and says this. After the Philistines had captured the Ark of God, they took it from Ebenezer to Ashdod. Then they carried the Ark into Dagon's temple and set it beside Dagon. When the people of Ashdod rose early the next day, there was Dagon, fallen on his face on the ground before the Ark of the Lord. They took Dagon and put him back in his place. But the following morning, when they rose, there was Dagon fallen on his face on the ground because the Ark of the Lord, before the Ark of the Lord. His head and hands had been broken off and were lying on the threshold. Only his body remained. That is why to this day, neither the priests of Dagon nor any others who entered Dagon's temple at Ashdod step on the threshold. The Philistines worshipped three demons in particular. One of them, mentioned here, was Dagon. In a lot of artistic renderings, Dagon is shown as a merman. A lot of historians believe that the Philistines were believers in evolution, that humans ultimately emerged from the sea creatures. So, in worshipping Dagon and having an entire temple dedicated to him, but to come in and see him on the ground and to come in and see him smashed, that is a physical picture of what was happening in the spirit realm. The Lord God battling against the spirit of Dagon in the spirit realm and destroying that spirit. They also worshipped Baal, who was often pictured as a bull type demon. And he was the god of abortion, the god over child sacrifice. They worshipped him as the supreme god, as the god of resurrection, as the god of fire, the god of storms, the god of provision, as in grain and dew, the god of the weather, god of rain, god of lightning, god of storms. Basically, a replacement for Jesus, the demonic version of Jesus, an antichrist spirit, if you will. And they also worshipped Ishtar or Ashtoreth, who's the goddess of transgenderism, where men would be they'd have their penis cut off and they would dress as women to serve her. And women worshippers would be refashioned as men to worship her. Ancient world writers gave credit to Ishtar Ashtoreth as the goddess who could turn male to female and female to male. All across First Samuel, when the Philistines are mentioned, we see them worshiping these three spiritual beasts. And to be honest with you, it still happens in the world today. Politicians still worship these demons. Don't trust politicians who try to convince you to be an atheist or an agnostic, because so many of them are actually involved in the occult themselves. In Ireland, for example, in Dublin city centre, Leinster House, where our government meet, is directly across the road from a Freemason lodge. That kind of tells you everything you need to know. In the USA, on the day that a president is being inaugurated, Freemasons meet and they chant and they hex and they vex and they curse to try to indwell the sitting president on his inauguration day with the spirit of Osiris, the Egyptian spirit. A lot of these politicians know exactly what they're doing. A lot of them know exactly what they're participating in. Even in the Bible, we often see pharaohs with magicians and emperors with magicians. And today, people think, oh, that was a long time ago. Oh, imagine having those bullets. No, it's still happening. And not all of them are ignorant of it either. And in fact, even Ireland today, we can see those three demons in operation. Dagon, for example, the god of evolution, if you will. Well, I mean, for how many years, how many decades has evolution been taught in the primary and secondary school education system? At college, university, this ludicrous idea that the earth is billions of years old for no other reason than because the people pushing this do not want to be responsible for their sin and their wickedness and their evil before a holy, mighty, all-knowing God. They're so busy trying to hide from God that they're trying to convince everybody else that he's imaginary and that actually they were animals. And before they were animals, they were a different kind of creature and a different kind and a different kind. And it takes a lot of mental gymnastics and a lot of belief to actually convince yourself that, this monkey became that monkey and that monkey became that monkey. And before there were monkeys, there were amoeba or whatever nonsense that they're trumpeting these days. The whole thing is absolutely bonkers. It's bizarre, but it's brainwashing. Because the more they tell people that humans can be decentered at the center of the physical life experience, you're just another animal, you're just another mammal. Well, people kind of began acting like it, didn't they? And now most people go about their lives just trying to live this sensual experience, this carnal experience, rather than focusing on God reality. Even in Ireland today, especially in our last government, a lot of them are still in there today. But let's do a little bit of an expose here. We have Leo Varadkar, who was our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister, an absolute scumbag. At one point, he gave the job to Micheál Martin before taking it back again because logic or some nonsense. Leo got defeated. He tried to remove women from the constitution and instead to create the door for transgenderism to become a thing and illegal immigrants to have the absolute running and rule of the country. When he got defeated, he was replaced by Simon Harris, who's an absolute turd, in my opinion. Then part of the Green Agenda, we have Eamon Ryan, and again, he tagged out at one point to be replaced by Roderick O'Gorman. A lot of these are still in office right now, not all of them, but before November last year, when we had a vote and we were able to get rid of a lot of the waste that was in the government, they decided to try to change the education system, saying that Irish people were pale and stale in comparison to other more vivid, more vibrant, more exciting cultures, trying to indoctrinate children into hating themselves. And then look at this kind of crap. I am cisgender. My gender identity is the same as the sex I was assigned with at birth. Yeah, that is true for everybody. I'm transgender, not a thing. My gender identity is different from the one I was assigned when I was born. I wish to live as my preferred gender. Why teach basic arithmetic when we can teach this? Gender identity. This is how I feel inside about my gender. Okay, it's absolutely disgusting trying to force that on a child. I am non-binary. I'm not going to dignify that one with a response. So already coming against children infused and fueled by and led by the spirit of Ashtoreth, a demonic deity, a demon, a lowercase g, God, who absolutely despises people, including children, and wants them to be confused by their own sexuality. Only perverts would push this. Then we also have evidence that Baal is very much at work in these politicians. Roderick O'Gorman, for example, who's a homosexual who for some reason was made the Minister for Children, which read into that if you will. That to me is incredibly sketchy. Decided to post this on Twitter, now called X, a woman simulating devouring a child and has clearly decapitated one. And she's mirroring a Greek myth about Kronos, a Greek god, which we call demons, who devoured most of his own children. Apart from Zeus, who, if one reads Revelation, might conclude is actually Satan, who refused to be eaten and then became the overlord of the gods. Roderick O'Gorman, again, Minister for Children, was seen marching at a Pride parade, and he was seen because he wanted to be seen, and said, "Happy Pride, delighted that at Peter Thatchell is marching with the Green Party today, Dublin Pride." For those of you who do not know anything about Peter Thatchell, he is an Englishman who has popularized the idea that no one has actually ever really raped children. They've just awakened their true sexuality. You know, if a man has sex with a boy, he hasn't actually molested the child. He's taught the child that actually he's been homosexual all along. This has been a holy experience, a sacred experience, an awakening experience. And that's what the children's minister thought was acceptable. Thought it was acceptable to hang around with, to photograph, and one might assume to push forward and say, well, actually, I agree with him. So this government was a coalition of three parties. Fianna Fáil, scum. Fine Gael, scum. And the Green Party, scum. So a group of three, but in the span of that government's lifespan, 5 leaders. Why is this significant? Because after Dagon was defeated and came crashing down, the Lord afflicted the Philistine territory with plagues. One of the plagues was a plague of tumors. One of the plagues was a plague of rats. And when the plagues got so bad, the Philistine leaders would send the ark to another area and another area. Effectively, they had city-states, 5 city-states. And when one just could not handle the pressure anymore, they moved to another city-state. When they couldn't handle the pressure, they moved to another Philistine city-state. And you know what? They probably thought, why have you brought this disaster on us? Why have you brought this calamity on us? But this went on for months. They didn't just think, you know what, let's just give the box back to the Israelites. No, they just held it while their people suffered. So the people who had formed these city-states, let's have a little look at their names, shall we? One of the city-states was called Ekron. It means to pluck or to uproot. And that government, and because there has been a bit of a spillover, the current one, are doing everything they can to uproot Irishness, to uproot everything that it means to be Irish. They want Irishness to be, to put a bad taste in your mouth while they tear up society, tear up our Christian roots, tear up traditionalism, tear up conservatism, tear up our national identity, and sacrifice it on the altar of globalism. It also means barren or barrenness. And if you were to look at projected figures for the population in the decades ahead, very, very alarming because these are the parties of abortion. These are the parties of child sacrifice. These are the parties of child murder. They do not want the population to increase at all. And in fact, they're also the parties who, by and large, pushed the alphabet people agenda and still do. So they do not want population growth. They want barrenness. They want emptiness. And then to replace us with people from the Islamic world in particular. Another of the city states was Gaza. Yes. Gaza means strong, mighty, or fierce. It means powerful. And it can also mean a place or agent of safety. So something that's safe, but it's powerful. It's safe, but it's fierce. It's safe, but it's dangerous. 2020 in a nutshell, right? Put on this mask, even if you can't breathe. Get this jab in your body, even if we don't know if it's safe or what it does. Don't go outside. You might get sick. Oh, you have not gone outside. Well, actually, now you're fat and you should have been outside all along. It was almost entirely safe for you. Don't send children to school. You don't know what might happen. Oh no, now a lot of our children are becoming very autistic, like, we should have sent them back. This kind of nonsense. Using power to create fear and population control under the illusion of keeping people safe, under the illusion of caring for the masses. In short, it's taking away people's freedom under the illusion of security. Then we also have Ashdod. Ashdod describes a mythological creature who is basically a winged bull and a demon. It also represents chaos, violence, destruction, and havoc to deal violently with. So again, the winged bull, we could say that that conjures images of Baal, the god of abortion, the havoc, absolute chaos. And right now, Ireland's immigration system is pure chaos, and it's a manufactured chaos. It's a manufactured crisis. You could say that our hospital system for such a small population is absolute havoc, is absolute chaos, which lends itself to the destruction all across the nation. There's also another area called Ava. Now, Ava is not a distinct city-state, but it's another name for another of the city-states. And it means to bend or to twist in the manner of ruination and perversion. So think of how they twist words. Man being twisted, woman being twisted, trans man, whatever the heck that is, trans woman. Well, this word actually, it's a negative word. Conservatism doesn't mean you love your country and want to protect it. It actually means you're a Nazi, you're a fascist, you're evil. They come for the word that come out of your mouth, your speak, and like, oh, you can't say that anymore. Oh no, that's a dirty word. And around, for example, people who just smoke fags, and oh, you can't say that anymore. It's called a cigarette because someone in California might get upset or offended. Another of the city-states was called Ashkelon. And another one is Gath. And Gath means the wine press. It's where you put all the grapes and you would crush them. And what would come out of them? the liquid to make wine. You might figuratively say blood. Wine press and blood have a big prophetic connection in the Bible. It's about being crushed, about being destroyed. When did the government really overstep and try to destroy the country? In 2020. And of course, in 2020, while you could not leave your house for fear of being arrested, the government were in Leinster House spending thousands of your euros, maybe even millions, and they were drinking alcohol maskless. But if you had done it, you would have spent the night in jail or worse. So we can already see that there were 5 city-states for the Philistines, and yet, and each had a king. And in Ireland, during that dark time of 2020, 2021, and even onwards to more recent times, you had 5 politicians who saw themselves as kings. 2 of them from Fine Gael, 2 from the Green Party, 1 from Fianna Fáil. 5 kings, 5 kings, the 5 nation states with the very prophetic names, and 5 manufactured assaults against the nation of Ireland. But in the same way that God dealt with the leaders in the ancient world, and that God's not cursing people today, but if you sow evil seed, you will reap a harvest. He is still the Lord of the harvest. What happened? Back then, the Philistines got tumors and a plague of rats, and already 4 politicians who were actively serving in those political parties or who were on side with them. One of them was genuine opposition. God love him, and he's okay now. Thank you, Jesus. Have had tumors, have had cancer reports, and I believe more reports are to come. And also, Leinster House had an infestation of rats. And according to some reports, the issue has not entirely been resolved. So what we see here is a prophetic narrative playing out. 5 Philistine kings, 5 rulers. A coalition of these kings, a coalition of political parties. Absolutely bent towards evil, ditto. God's judgment on them, a plague of tumors and a plague of rats. They sowed evil seed and they've reaped the harvest. And they've been afflicted by tumors. And Leinster House, our political building, full of rats. Indeed, all across the country, a lot of people are actually saying that they see more of an infestation of rats now than they've ever seen before. And again, as people's sin levels increase, they can expect a physical picture of that in the natural. But the amazing thing, and in the story in the Bible actually, is the Philistines then said, okay, you know what, enough is enough. So they created, I assume, massive golden artifacts of tumors and of rats, and they sent them back to Israelites as well as the Ark of the Covenant. And that is when the plagues were lifted from them. So, these evil politicians, I am declaring that every single evil one falls down like a domino, and all their wicked, evil plans be exposed, and that they be dealt with, be it ever so severely. And we'll need new prisons for the number of them going to jail and for the wicked people that they have been complicit with in the ruination of Ireland thus far. But yes, God's a God of justice and loves justice. He prefers grace. He prefers to extend unmerited, undeserved favor rather than to have to deal with wickedness. And if they will say, we relent, we give up, and we return Jesus to the people. We stop coming against him. We recognize, okay, he's God. If you want him, take him. If you want your free speech to worship him, take it back. I believe that even the villains on the world stage right now, all across the world, but here too in Ireland, they can become heroes. Maybe years ago they wanted to be in politics because they saw the trajectory the nation was on and they wanted to improve it, but they've been hijacked and they let their destinies be hijacked. If they will bow the knee to God again, all their wickedness can be washed away by the blood of Jesus and they can finish their race well. Future generations can look at them and say, you stopped a one world government trying to force its way into Ireland. You're a hero. You're amazing. History books will celebrate their names. But stay on this trajectory and see what happens. Here endeth the lesson.